What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're on the e-bike builder channel. We're not reviewing bikes. We're not reviewing and begging for bikes. We're building bikes. We're making things happen. Let's do this. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. So today we're trying out something very exciting, guys. Very exciting. This is a new controller. Very exciting. It's called the Flipsky. I don't know if it's Flipsky or Flipsky. I've seen people call it different things, but it's called the Flipsky 75-100 Pro V2 speed controller. So this is a controller, motor controller, speed controller, whatever you want to call it. So I got it on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, guys. Amazon Prime. We got it from Jeff Bezos, Amazon Prime. His robot dog delivered it on a drone to my driveway. Here we go. Let's pop it open now. We're unboxing it. Like and subscribe. Hit the like button. All right, so this is going to be one of them. Quite possibly, this could be one of the most exciting things of 2024 for e-bikes. So let's go. Let's get this thing unboxed. We got 2 bags in here. So this Flipsky comes with 2 options. There's an option where it has a power switch. Maybe I'll put something on the screen, show the power switch. And then there's an option that comes with a key twisting mode to turn it on, right? So there's 2 options for how you turn this thing on and how you're going to turn your e-bike on with this controller, right? There's either the button or there's the key switch. So I thought it was either or. I thought that you could either get the key switch or the button, but it seems like I see the power button in here, like the power switch, the button. So it seems like I got the power button and I got the key switch. So let's take a look at this key switch. Let's open this thing up. See what this is about. It also looks like, okay, so it looks like there's some kind of a display on here as well, and I imagine it looks like there's just like a LCD and it can show 3 numbers. So I don't know if that's your voltage, what that'll show. It does seem like it would probably take a lot of room on the bars. Like, look at this. This is going to take up a lot of room on the bars, so that's a little bit annoying. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. I like the idea of having a key switch, but I don't like how big and chunky this thing is. So, I don't know. So that's the key switch. Let's see. How does it feel? Oh. 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 It's got a nice little click to it. All right. So that is like the little key ignition switch display thing that comes with the controller. Now, I think, so this is a VESC controller, and what VESC is it's the software that runs the motor controller. Right, so this is a VESC controller. It's an open source motor controller software. So in comparison to something like a Phase Runner runs on proprietary software that ASI, you know, the ASI makes these motor controllers, and then Grintech buys them from ASI and makes them and rebrands them as Phase Runners, right? So those are the controllers I've previously used in the past, but the difference here is that this thing is only like $100, $130. Phase Runner is like $300 or $400, $360 for a Phase Runner. So this thing costs like 1/3 of a Phase Runner, right? And this is VESC, so it's open source. It's not locked down. It's not proprietary, right? So Vesk is like an open source thing. It's like it's got apps and there's support and there's open source means that different software engineers and developers all kind of work on it and contribute to the project together. And there's no one person or one company that's in charge of everything, right? So this is kind of like, this is very exciting because it is a speed controller, a Vesk speed controller. And it's only like $130. I got this on Amazon for like $100. I don't know what was going on, but I got this for $100. And I don't even need a new controller, but I saw this thing for $100, and I mean, in some aspects, it's better than a Phase Runner. So let's try this thing out. We're gonna try this thing out. So I'm gonna pop this thing open, and I'll show you what's going on with this in here. Let's unbox it. We're still unboxing. All right, so we're sliding it out. We're sliding it out. All right. So it says Flipsky 75-100 Pro V2. So that's important. V2 with aluminum PCB. Right. So there was another one of these, a V1. I don't think they called it a V1. I think it was just a Pro, and there was no V. Right. It was just the 75-100 Pro was the first version of this. But I guess like you want this V2 with the aluminum PCB because it helps with cooling. It helps with dissipating the heat. So let's look at everything we got here. Let's untangle this. Get some of these wires out of here. Okay, so it comes with a USB 2 to USB-C adapter cable. So that's probably for programming the controller. So then down here, let's see. So let's look at all of these these wires. So this USB cable, so this is a USB-C, and it is connecting up here to the USB. Is this a header right here? I don't know what this is called, guys. I'm not like a circuit board master, but so there's like a little connector right here with 3 wires for the USB. So that's where that connects. So then there's a connector right here. I'll put the wiring diagram on the screen. It's gonna be kind of hard to see things here, but so there's what? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little connector guys on the Flipsky, right? So the one at the top left, I think, is the one where we would, let's see here. All right, guys, it's a new day. I'm back at it. Need to wire up this Flipsky. Alright, so I've removed some of these wires from the controller here. So I removed this servo one that was right here. I removed the USB one because I'm not going to use the USB, I'm going to use Bluetooth. And then I removed this CAN connector. So now we're left with only what we need. So this one right here goes to the ignition switch. It's already wired up, and it came with the Flipsky. And then so this one right here, this goes to the motor, right? These are kind of the wires that go to the motor. So you got ground, you got your Hall signals, and then you got a temperature signal and a 5-volt. So I've got some heat shrink on all those guys, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wire the Flipsky. I'm gonna wire these. I think this is kind of like the motor connector. Like these are the wires that go to the motor. So in my case, I've got all of my motors wired with an L10 connector. So this is what all of my motors have. And this is a spare L10 motor cable that I had from when I made a harness for my another bike. So you can see this one, it's got a motor cable and it's got 3 big pins in there for the phase wires, and then there's a whole bunch of hall sensor lines and 5-volt and ground and stuff like that. So we can carry a lot of these signals from the motor, you know, our phase wires and all of like the hall sensors and the 5-volt and the ground and stuff like that, the temperature. We can carry these signals from the motor to the Flipsky if we just wire up all these little tiny wires to all of the tiny wires on my L10 connector. So that's what I'm going to do in my case. Now, it might not make sense for you. Like you might not need an L10 connector. I'm just doing this for convenience sake, right? Because if I just have this one plug on my Flipsky, that means I can connect it and disconnect it from my motors very easily, just with one thing. And this is like a waterproof locking connector. So it's almost kind of like a quick disconnect between my motor and the controller. That's going to make it a lot easier just to hook things up and then disconnect them, right? So if you have a motor that uses an L10 motor cable, you could use a female end of one and then cut it and then hook all of your wires up like I'm going to. But you don't need one of these, right? Like you can just hook the phase wires directly up to your motor. You can hook these wires up to your motor however you need for the hall sensors, right? So I'm going to do that next. And then beyond that, we just have to hook the throttle up. It's 3 wires for the throttle that go to this thing. So I'll do that last. So I'm going to finish connecting all of these wires to these wires here. And then I've got some bullet connectors that I crimped on to the phase wires, and then I can just plug those in to the phase wires on the controller, right? So what I'm going to do to connect all these wires, I don't have any fancy way of doing this. I don't have any like little 6-pin connectors where I can make it fancy. I'm just going to strip the insulation off of each of these wires, and then we're just going to get a little bit of solder and connect them together. And then I've got some heat shrink that's already down here. So when we're done, we can pull that heat shrink back down over that solder joint and then shrink that on there. And then this thing should just be connected onto my Flipsky like this when everything's said and done. And then this will plug into the motor, just one thing, plug into the motor. I've already got the other end of one of these on my motors. So that's how I'm going to do it. Let's go. Let's do it. And so what I'm doing is I'm just using a flush cutters to just gently kind of score the insulation on the end of these wires. And I'm just barely chomping down into that insulation. As soon as you feel any kind of metal on those wires, I would stop. Alright, and then once you score it, I can just kind of use my fingernails and grab into that crack where you scored it, and then just kind of start pulling. Give them a little cut, score. Alright guys, I started out with the 5-volt in the ground. We got those soldered on there. So I'm going to keep going with the rest of these hall signals. And then the temperature sensor is going to be this. The temperature on the L10, I think, is the gray one. So I'm going to hook this gray one to the white temperature wire on the Flipsky. Alright guys, I've soldered all of these wires. The ground, Hall 321, temperature, and 5 volts. So these wires right here, they are all connected to the respective wires on my L10 motor cable. So next, and so it's not pretty, right? It's just little tiny wires. They're kind of hard to solder, especially with my big soldering iron. But we got it done. So now we're just gonna pull down these little shrink wrap guys and shrink wrap all those solder joints. And then I'm gonna get the throttle hooked up over here, and then we can start playing around with this thing. Alright guys, so we got all these wires connected. The 3 phase wires are connected to my L10 female connector. And then I've got the 5 volt, the ground, and then the Hall sensor and the temperature connected to this guy over here. Now the last bit is on this guy, we got to hook our throttle up, and it's 3 wires. So on this guy, I don't know if you can see, but it says ADC 1 ground and then 3.3 volts. So it's ADC 1 is this white wire. That's the signal for the throttle. And then there's the ground is the black. And then the 3.3 volts is this red wire. And now there's two wires, 2 red wires on the right hand side here that are right next to each other. But we want that 3.3 volts. So it's the second one from the right. And you don't want to mess this up, because if you plug the 5 volts into your throttle, or if you mix any of these wires up, like, something could happen that's bad, right? So it's ADC 1, ground, and 3.3 volts. We want to hook up to a throttle. I've got one of these Bafang throttles that's got one of these waterproof connectors on it. We can see it's got 3 pins in there, so that means there's 3 wires inside of here. But I need this to be a lot longer because the throttle needs to connect to these wires. So I'm gonna cut some of these wires out of this connector thing, because I don't have the connector that can just plug into this. So we're gonna cut those 3 wires out of this thing for the throttle, and then I'm gonna cut this throttle. I'm gonna cut this connector off the end of this throttle. I've got a bunch of these throttles, but we obviously can't plug these wires into here. So let's cut this guy off, and we'll see. So it looks like there's a red. Right there, so you can see I stripped some of this insulation off of the throttle cable. So it's got a black, blue, and a red. I'm just gonna get those wired up. So then on this connector, so it says ADC, ground, and 3.3 volts. So there's 3 wires that are all in a row. And it's gonna be white, black, and red. So it's these guys right here. We don't want this very last one. That's the 5 volt. We want this white, black, and red all in a row. Make sure that red is the second to the last. 3.3 volts, right? Leave this one alone. So I'm going to take these guys, chop them. Alright. So now I've just got ADC. ADC ground 3.3 volts are the wires that I have split out of there. And so obviously this throttle needs to be on my bars, and this controller, these leads that go to the motor are very short. So this controller is going to have to be like right next to the end of my motor's cable so that I can hook this in there. So that means this throttle is going to be a long ways away, a long distance from where it needs to connect here. So I'm going to get 3 extension wires. I've got some small, this looks like 22 gauge wire. So I'm going to make these throttle cables longer so that they can reach the controller, reach these wires from when this thing's mounted on the handlebars. So make this longer and then connect it onto here. Alright guys, it might not be pretty, but we've got the throttle wired up to these longer wires. So the throttle, again, there's a blue, red, and a black. So the blue wire from my Bafang throttle is going to connect to that white wire that is the ADC1 on the Flipsky. And then this red wire from the throttle is going to go to the 3.3 volts from the Flipsky. And then the black wire from the throttle goes to the black on the Flipsky, so that's the ground. So I'm going to get my little heat shrinkers pulled back over these, and then we'll shrink those onto the solder joints and cover those up. Holy buckets, guys. Alright, so that was a little bit of a project to get this thing wired up. It looks intimidating, but it's just like a lot of small wires and a lot of dinking around, a lot of little tiny connections that you have to make. But so anyways, so in short, I've soldered an XT90 connector onto these main DC power leads for the Flipsky. I figured out that this little thing is actually in a Bluetooth antenna. So it serves a purpose. It's a Bluetooth antenna. The Bluetooth and this Flipsky is integrated on the inside, so it's built in. So this little plug right here goes to our ignition switch. Then this connector over here with the hulls and the ground, temp 5 volts. So that is, I've got all of those connected into the appropriate wires in my L10 female harness. The phase wires also go into this wiring harness. And again, I'm just using this wiring harness because all of my motors use this. So I can just wire this one harness onto my Flipsky here, and then I can plug this into any of my bikes because they all use the same harness, right? But if your motor doesn't use this connector, then you would have to connect your phase wires and your hall sensors and all of that other stuff to it differently, right? So then on this guy, on this main connector, I've cut out these 3 wires, right? It's ADC1, ground, and 3.3 volts. I've got, so ground is the black, ADC1 is the white, and then 3.3 volts is the red one. And that is the wire I made long, and then I connected it to my Bafang throttle that I'm going to use for this. Controller. So I cut this connector off the end of my Bafang throttle, and then I directly connected these 3 wires to the appropriate wires in the throttle. And inside of the throttle signal was on a blue wire, it wasn't a white wire, so I've got the blue wire connected to this white wire, which is the ADC1 in the Flipsky. So now I'm gonna get the bike in the stand. I'm gonna get this thing mounted on the bike somewhere. One disadvantage of this thing is it's not waterproof, and it just has wires hanging out all over the place. So it's not as nice as like a potted controller, like a Phase Runner, where it's more or less waterproof and airtight. So this one is not. So you're not going to want to get this thing wet. And it's got all these wires hanging out all over the place that you're going to want to have protected and tucked away. Right? So I'm going to get this thing over on the bike. Alright guys, it's a big mess, but we're on the BBS HD mountain bike. We're going to try this thing out. I've got the motor cable connected, so my motor and my BBS HD, I made a wiring harness that comes out to this L10 connector right here. Then I've plugged it into my female L10 connector that we just used to wire. This is the wiring that we just did in this video right here. So the phase wires are all hooked up to the L10 connector, and then I've got the rest of the wires, like the 5 volt, the ground, all of the hall sensors and all of that are hooked up to the Flipsky. I've got the Flipsky on the bike. I've stretched, I need to make a better battery cable here. Right now I just stretched the cable from my battery directly over to the controller, and it's just kind of like, you know, it's not pretty, but it's connected. Then this little guy, this is the Bluetooth antenna. We'll just kind of pull that guy out. Alright, so I still need to like finalize this, but it's just strapped on the bike. And then I push this little button here, and the LED turned on. You can see the LED right there turned on, and it's kind of like blinking. So now we're recording. Alright, so it says welcome to VESC tool. So I'm gonna hit next. So now it says blah blah blah, experimental software designed to develop and test electrical systems incorporating motors or actuators. Electrical systems can cause danger to humans, property, and nature. Okay, so things that can happen even when using the correct settings are electrical failure, fire, electric shocks, hazardous smoke, overheating motors and actuators. So, okay, yes, I understand and accept. Next. Yes, next. Finish. Alright, so it seems like it's already detected VESC on Bluetooth UART. So I'm gonna mark this as my preferred because it's my only one. And I'm gonna hit connect. So it says connecting and okay. Alright, so we're in. Now, so I think the next thing we want to do... Oh man guys, so that was confusing. So it says by default the maximum input voltage is 72 volts. But a fully charged 72 volt battery is what, 84.5? So, I mean, I'm gonna make it like 86. So that's like 1 volt over like the maximum voltage of my battery. So this is really confusing. I don't even know how I got to this. So minimum input voltage, maximum input voltage. So I went to... So where am I here in the app? This is crazy. So what is this? Oh, so that's why it's like you can't even see everything that is that's in this menu up here. Like when you're looking at this, it doesn't look like scrollable, but it is. Right? So this is something to keep in mind when we're using this phone app. But so I had to scroll all the way over to the right, motor config, and then I had to pick general in that first drop down, and then for this second drop down I had to pick advanced. So that is how I got to this minimum input voltage and the maximum input voltage. And it's that maximum input voltage is the input voltage above which a fault code is thrown, right? So it was set to 72, but a 72 volt battery charges up to 84.5. So that was holding me back. So now we can go back. And we're going to go back and we're going to try and set up the motor again. Now that we have fixed that voltage limits, we're not going to hit. So it's going to pop up this low default parameters. No, I'm not doing that. So I'm going to choose generic, next, large in-runner. The motor pulls down here says 4, so that sounds good. So we'll hit next. So this selection determines blah, blah. Okay, hit yes. All right, so I've got lithium ion battery type. We've got 20 in series, 20 amp hour capacity. I've set the battery current max to 30 amps. Hit next. I've put in 46 tooth on my chainring, and then it's 42 tooth in the back. Wheel diameter is 750 millimeters on my 29-inch wheels. 4 motor poles. So now we're going to hit run detection. And let's see what happens. So it's going to say this is going to spin up all motors. Make sure nothing is in the way. Okay. Oh. What? Okay, so we got a detection result there. So we got past that fault code that we were having. So I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. Boop. Just so we have that and we can remember what it found. So it's got some numbers on there. Hall sensors, temp comp. This says true. Okay. Okay. So it says select which VESCs have inverted motor direction. Press the forward or reverse button to try. So let's do forward. Oh, wrong way. Alright, so we're going to hit inverted. Alright, because it was spinning, it seemed like it was trying to go backwards. So I changed it to inverted. Now I'm going to push forward again. There it goes. Alright. Right? So we got the direction of the motor spinning the right way. You can hit finish. Alright. So now I think we've got the motor set up and like auto-tuned. That's kind of like the equivalent of doing the auto-tune in the phase runner. So now we need to set up the throttle, right? So we're going to go to setup input. So it says which VESC is the input connected to. So I've only got one of them. So we're just going to hit next. And then I'm going down to select this ADC input, such as conventional e-bike throttles. We're going to hit next. Alright, so now I'm going to grab my throttle down here. So it says move the throttle from min to max, then leave it in the center. Okay. So right now it's at minimum. I'm going to change it to the maximum. And you can see on the screen it increased that blue line, and I'm going to release it down until that blue line is like in the center. And then I gotta be able to hit this button on my phone while I'm holding that in the center. So let's see, how do I want it to feel? So this is full, so then the center would be like right here or something. And then I'll hit applying right while I'm holding that throttle there. Okay, so now when I hit the throttle, now that we've applied and rode it, I've hit the you can see when I'm not hitting the throttle, the blue line isn't going at all, and then when I hit the throttle, that blue line's going all the way, and then when I have the throttle about halfway, it should be about halfway. Okay, so now we've got the throttle set up. We don't need to invert the voltage or anything like that. I'm gonna hit next. So it says communicating, so now it says general, control type current. We'll just leave that on regular. So let's hit, what does help? So it says control type. So here's some information about control type. I guess you can pause if you want to read that stuff. I'm just gonna hit next. So what is filter? Let's hit help. So it's on. It looks like it's on by default. So I'm just gonna hit next. So it had a little blue thing down at the bottom that said like app config, right? Okay. So now let's see here. Does my throttle work? Oh yeah, look at that. Alright guys, so that was all the GoPro footage that I got earlier. I did get that thing popping. I got it going. I got the Flipsky running. It's been raining, it's been cold, and every time I would take the bike outside, it would start raining. And the Flipsky is not very water resistant. So yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of time to like play around with it, and I've been playing around with the Vesk app, and there's a lot of cool features in there. I've been playing around with trying to just like chill out the BBS HD so that I don't break anything again. But yeah, so I'd appreciate it if you guys like and subscribe. And I'm going to put a wiring diagram on the screen that kind of explains better how I hooked things up. Hopefully it explains better how I hooked things up. So I'll put the wiring diagram on the screen. The Flipsky seems a little bit intimidating, but I unplugged half of the things from Flipsky. So it was pretty simple when you just break it down one thing at a time. So I'll put that wiring diagram on the screen. And then like I said before, like you don't have to use a L10 motor cable. If your motor doesn't have that cable, then you can just wire the phase wires from the Flipsky directly up to your motor, and then wire the Hall sensor wires and all that other stuff. You don't need an L10 connector, right? You can just skip that and just wire it straight from the Flipsky to your motor, and it'll work just fine. So, but yeah, so I am very excited about this Flipsky controller because in the past, e-bike controllers have been, man, it's been, you know, you gotta get a phase runner to get a controller where you can do field weakening and get things moving, right? So in the past, we've been paying $360 for a phase runner, and now in 2024, I think this Flipsky 75100 Pro V2 came out like late 2023. So this thing, it dropped late last year and it's just starting to kind of take traction. But I think this is like the biggest thing in e-bikes for a while, right? Like this is the biggest thing in e-bikes for a while, because in the past it's been like there's two options. You can either get those like generic controllers that just look like a big metal box, you know, and there's like the cheaper like KT, you know, Kelly controllers. And then you can get like big, huge like Sab Botan controllers, but they're just like big metal boxes, right? And they're not waterproof or anything really. Or else there are smaller controllers like a phase runner, but you know, they do FOC, they've got field weakening, you know, it's a sine wave controller, but they're more expensive, right? So this Flipsky is exciting because now you can build like a high performance e-bike where kind of like phase runner power levels, but it's just so much more affordable, and there's pros and cons. The phase runner can do 75 volts. I think the Flipsky is 72 volts max. So that's one thing. The Flipsky, it's a little bit harder to set up. There's a lot of, you're gonna have to be, connecting wires and stuff. But yeah. So yeah, please like and subscribe, buddies. So yeah, I'd appreciate it if you guys like and subscribe. I'm gonna get this thing popping real soon. We're gonna get the Flipsky popping, and we're gonna get the BDS HD ripping on this thing. So yeah, like and subscribe, dudes. I'm gonna be ripping on this thing real soon, so I'll let you know how this Flipsky goes. And hopefully, prayer hands in the comments. Prayer hands in the comments, boys, that the Flipsky is the coolest thing for e-bikes in 2024, because I think it might be. So like and subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think about the Flipsky? Is it gonna go as fast as the Phase Runner? I think it might even go faster, guys, because there's no limitation imposed on us by ASI. So like and subscribe. Peace out.